Ryan Massey said, at the ILM Model Shop's wrap party, did reconnecting with those old colleagues feel regrounding to you? You haven't been in the model making industry for a long time as a full-time tradesman. How, if at all, disconnected do you feel from that industry after Mythbusters and Tasted? Well, yes, it's been a long time since I've built models on the clock for something. But reconnecting with my colleagues from ILM days is absolutely regrounding. In a high-stress professional environment, you can't really hide any parts of your personality. They're all going to be apparent to your coworkers, the best and the worst of you. My third day on a commercial set in New York, 1987, working for this producer named Julianne Hausler, I think. And I was wearing contact lenses and I got sawdust in one. And I'm sitting there being a useless production assistant because my eye was all like puffy. And this art director came over and he's like, "Why are you wearing contacts?" He's literally yelling at me. "Just wear glasses on set. If you're wearing contacts to look good, you're an idiot. Anyone in this room is going to see you at your worst inside of an hour." It's absolutely true. So you're working in a high stress environment, working at a high level, your colleagues know all that they need to know about you. And having the respect of those colleagues feels incredibly grounding because they know me, they know exactly how full of shit I am, right? Like they know me in an abiding way, and I really appreciate that. So even though, and to be fair, even though it's been 23 years since I have built models on the clock for a movie or something, I still feel deeply connected to that process. And honestly, every time we step onto a new movie set, I feel like I am just meeting more colleagues. And that feels really delightful. It feels really lovely to be part of that, what I think of as like that plasma pool. So not very disconnected at all, really. I still feel like my skills are about where they were at. So let's talk about what's happened since I was a model maker. And I'm going to give this like broad, deep view, which is that I've spent the intervening 23 years working really hard to be in control of my aesthetic, that I am making all the decisions about the things that I make, and nobody's telling me how to do it. I want that. That's how I want to build. That's a goal, right? You want to exercise your craft until you get to do exactly what you want with it. But I've talked about how 3 years ago in 2022, I was in New York doing a J-term class with NYU, and my days were free. So I embedded in Tom Sachs's shop for 2 whole weeks as one of his shop assistants. And I found executing another artist's aesthetic to be incredible after all this time I've spent being in control of my aesthetic. To go and try and nail someone else's was non-trivial, not easy, more difficult than I suspected it would be at the time, and also far more rewarding because I didn't get it right every time. I didn't get it right most of the time, but I got it right a couple times. And that felt really great. Like that was the goal, right? Your goal is to execute at the level that the artist you're working for wants you to hit. So to make a couple of things that like got Tom's respect on that level as one of working for him felt great. And I just did another one. I just built a construction recreationally where we didn't film it. And I can't even really talk about it because it has to do with magic. But again, I do like the practice of sort of dipping in to deliver something for someone else's vision. I find that really invigorating. I feel like that connects me to my execution of craft. I got way off the original question. Mark Hooker says, do you remember a point in your career when people came to you for advice rather than you asking for advice? Basically when the apprentice became the master. No. I don't remember a specific moment, but I will tell you that our tested colleague Mel Ho and my other tested colleague, Kate Sabaker, they built some robots for a film. We covered this on the channel. And at the very beginning of the process, like 6 months before the shoot, Mel just wrote and was like, hey, can I come by and pick your brain? I would just like a download of kind of like things I should look out for. This is my first time, she said, for the first time they said working on a film like this as a provider of a prop for a film, what should I know? And so I gave them probably about an hour, 90 minutes of like all the stuff I wished someone had told me. And I'll give you the very first piece of advice I gave Mel, which was, you will spend time building this prop. You will work with the director and the art director. You will have feedback loops. You will execute this thing. You will send pictures of its progress. You will get approval, and you're going to show up on set with this object that you built. And within the first hour on set, you're going to get a question that makes you wonder if anyone has listened to a thing you've said for the past 6 months. That is a whole bunch of people nodding at the screen right now. Yeah, that is exactly how that works. So Martin, I don't remember specifically when people started to come to me for advice on things, but I will say being asked for advice is lovely. And I'm not saying that this is how you can get to me or like have a conversation with me if you want to have a conversation with me, but it is a very reasonable thing to call someone up to ask for advice or to reach out to them to say, could I pick your brain about some advice about stuff? I used to know this, a good friend of mine is a super high level electrical contractor. Like, you know, he manages the electricity for giant skyscrapers and stuff like that. And when we first met, he was already at that like super high level. And I was just like getting my first jobs in the special effects industry. And I was talking about looking for other places to work. And he said, where do you want to work? And I said, well, I'd love to work at IDEO, the design company. And he said, why don't you call them up? And I'm like, what do I call them up for? And he said, call them up for an informational interview. I've talked about this on the channel before. I said, what's an informational interview? And he said, email someone you can get to through the website and say, I'd love to pick your brain for half an hour. I'm in this industry and I'm thinking about your industry and just wondering if you could give me some context. And sure enough, they wrote me back the next day and I had a lovely conversation with 2 people from IDEO by the end of the week. This is a great way to kind of do a soft interview. I didn't end up getting hired at IDEO. I didn't actually end up applying for a job at IDEO, but you know, I met with a couple of people and I got my questions answered. I got a lot of wonderful information out of that conversation. But also, if you do want to work someplace, that's a great way to get the consciousness of your existence in the door. And I've always really appreciated Bob for giving me that. Blake asks, the oxygen connectors on the Apollo suit were magnificent pieces of engineering that are mostly hidden. Do you have any other favorite examples of hidden engineering? Ooh. I mean, when you know, the first place my brain goes to is the wrist connectors and the neck connector, which are, I think, if anything, even more amazing mechanically than the various oxygen and data and liquid connectors on the front of the suit. Specifically because the wrist connectors and the neck rings are made to spin freely, so the astronaut has no loss of dexterity, but they don't leak. And please disabuse me of this in the comments if I am wrong, but having looked at the blueprints for Apollo parts, what it looks like is that seal, which I'm like, how do you seal something that spins freely? Well, you work with highly precise O-rings that are touching a surface at an exactitude that blows my mind. I have handled original Apollo parts, and I think I can detect this as a machinist, as a machine operator who has some facility working on quality stuff using machine tools. I felt like when I touched an Apollo neck ring and opened and closed it, I was feeling something that was a precision that was past what a blueprint could generate. Because I think that there really is, like, there's what the drawing says, and then there's what the operator brings. And it's not one-to-one. The operator, I think I'm right about this. And again, disabuse me if I'm wrong, but at the highest level of machining work, there's what the drawing says, and then there's reality. And when they don't match, you have to get the behavior you're looking for out of this thing. That doesn't mean you're changing tolerances. It just means that in certain cases, you might be working with tolerances that are higher than the drawing says and also lower than the drawing says in order to get the right behavior out of it. This is the longest way of saying when I'm touching those original Apollo parts, when I've been lucky enough to handle original Apollo pieces, what I feel when I touch them is a level of institutional knowledge that is way deeper than a simple blueprint you could give to someone and get an object that worked. Huntsville, Alabama has a temperature-controlled storage facility for NASA prototypes for things that were only built once or twice. They have all sorts of wacky stuff over there. And there's some beautiful, beautiful pieces. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I wanted to briefly mention that you could become a tested member. I know, everybody is competing for you to become a member of their thing. What I want to express to you is that the tested membership has become such an important part of the tested family. We get tremendous feedback from the tested members, and they expand the stories that we can tell and the things that we have access to. And you can become a part of it right now by clicking on the link below. See you in the chat.